Now, going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek, Coffee Chat in Iowa, explaining how small towns will be better off with him in power. Now, he does have a short little text blurb, and if you do have suggestions for picture-in-picture or video-in-video software for production, I would really appreciate it. I'm currently using OBS open source software, and with the current configuration, I can't put the picture-in-picture. I've tried other ones. Unfortunately, I keep having issues with the camera not turning on or the camera not registering. And I've updated drivers to the camera. Maybe it's just too new. You're currently using a Razer Heiken 4K USB camera. So if you have suggestions, I really do appreciate the feedback, even if it's harsh, because I do want to make the show better for everyone who's tuning in. And in turn, if you could let me know in the comments what I should do better, and click the subscribe button, greatly appreciate it. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and I'll read this really quick before playing the video. So Vivek says, quote, "If the number of minutes in an hour fluctuated, no one would show up to their meetings on time. When the dollar fluctuates wildly, capital allocations become inefficient and impedes growth. I will end the dual mandate for the Fed and restore its sole purpose, stabilizing the dollar as a unit of measurement against a basket of commodities, period. I don't need 23,000 plus employees to do that, and will implement a 90% headcount reduction at the US Fed." Now that is a lot of fat to trim. So without further ado, I will play the video.
You can tell me, Jack, if you agree with this being true, is many of the regulations coming from the federal government, from the EPA, or even from the broader state government, land use restrictions or otherwise that drive up housing costs, this is one of the great burdens for people who live in small towns across America. So I do believe in the 10th Amendment. That means the federal government shouldn't do most of the heavy lifting. We don't want the federal government to do most of the heavy lifting. But part of the job of the next leader is to make sure the federal government's getting out of the way. So my view is the next U.S. president needs to be committed to rescinding the unconstitutional federal regulations that Congress never gave the power to those three-letter agencies to actually implement. That will have an effect on small towns across this country to stimulate the economy, to bring down the tax burden, for example, as well, to bring down the regulatory burden that allows businesses to thrive on their own 2 feet without a federal government that necessarily gets in their way. And then it'll be up to state legislators, folks like yourself, Jackie, at the local level, to understand what the needs of that individual community are without using a one-size top-down, one-size-fits-all approach coming from on high from the federal government. I think one of the areas where the federal government needs to act is in reforming the U.S. Fed. So the U.S. Federal Reserve, I think, has been out of control over the last 2 decades, printing money in a really arbitrary way, when I think the job of the U.S. Federal Reserve should be solely to stabilize the U.S. dollar. So under my watch, under the Federal Reserve and my administration, we would have a single mandate of pegging the dollar to gold, silver, and agricultural and farm commodities. So you actually have a stable dollar. That's one of the things that's actually very hard for small businesses. Large multinational companies, they can hedge their currency risks. Small businesses, when the dollar is volatile, everyday business owners lose out. Wage earners lose out in this country as well. And that's also, it's not one of the politically firebrand topics that you're going to, arouse a crowd over. But if you're looking at actually driving real world problems and solutions that you can address as the next president, that's high on my list. And reforming the Fed radically, that's something I'll be able to do as the next president as well. It takes somebody who understands it, who's come from the background of business, to be able to see that through, and I think that's one of my responsibilities as the next president. Thank you.
That would be revolutionary if you actually have the dollar mean something. One of my nerdy hobbies that I can't help but appreciate as the older I get is vintage coins and currencies. It tells a story. It used to be artwork back in the day, the amount of beauty they put into the production and what they put on the bills. And if you do get into that hobby, I don't recommend it because prices fluctuate and, well, actually no, silver and gold are pretty stable. But I'm too cheap to buy actually the high quality ones because you get priced out of the hobby pretty quick. So I have a couple things that my grandpa gave me, old dollar bills. And back in the day, they actually called them silverbacks because it was not a pejorative term as a slang, but if you actually look on it, it was called a silver certificate. When back in the day, when you got paper currency, it was nothing more than a promise for a piece of real gold or real silver. It was just a promise to get a real thing back. Nowadays, under Democrats and Republicans, the government just prints so much money at a just drop of a dime, which causes inflation, which especially hurts small businesses. And no one likes prices getting raised. especially if you're a small business, you may or may not be able to absorb some of these costs. I mean, it's one of those things where it hurts everyone. I mean, I believe it was famously said by Ronald Reagan that inflation is the silent killer or the silent thief, which now I have to look up the real quote. Because it is quite iconic, although not as iconic as me to remember it, although I blame myself for that. So Ronald Reagan once said, "Inflation is as violent as a mugger, as frightening as an armed robber, and as deadly as a hitman," unquote. And this is thanks to brainyquote.com, which, A+ for a domain, you know exactly what they do. And it's true. Even if you're everyone who's struggling, they got little savings in the bank, the government just makes it darn near useless because they print more and more and more money. And I don't know how it's sustainable. Let me know, do you think that's sustainable? I mean, it just, everyone, even if you're struggling paycheck to paycheck and you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to save, at the end of the day, the government makes it damn near worthless. Inflation just got so out of control. Same with government spending, which partially is one of the things that causes it. So do you think it would be good to realign the US dollar to actually be aligned to something that's tangible? Now, again, it's one of those things where it's kind of like asking someone to decrease their own salary. I don't know if the government would want to do this because that would subsequently decrease their power. They couldn't just print magically more money overnight. But I wonder how many people in the comment section appreciated that. So that video got about 250,000 views and 3,096 likes. I'd say more than half. I'd venture to say a majority of the comments will support him. But let's dive in. First comment is pejorative or against Vivek. This is from Dr. Patrick M. AI changes everything, which subsequently I think AI will. Now this doctor says, or alleged doctor, I don't see a certificate, but nevertheless, he says, quote, "He's that know-it-all guy in your college dorm who has an answer for everything but backs it up with nothing. Completely empty suit, never held elected office, no civic, government, or military service, never even voted in a GOP primary, experience making money on Wall Street deals," unquote. That person did get 60 likes. And I was going to say, even if it's an empty suit, he did have the pertinent decision to suit up, as every man should. But, I mean, I don't know how he said. I'm fascinated that so many people agreed with that. The big issue, or not the big issue, I think one of the biggest things Trump did was show people you can get elected without having served in the government, and people will vote for you. So I don't think that's as big a detriment as people think when it comes to Vivek. Quite the antithesis, the opposite. I think a lot of people are going to vote for him to be the Republican nominee because he hasn't spent 50 plus years in the government getting nothing done. Or, actually, no, you could probably debate that most of the things they do that get done actually make our lives worse. So it'll be interesting to see. Is that the telling comment that'll be most of them? Let's find out. Scrolling down. Somebody by the name of Dargon O'Sullivan says, quote, "Nothing would be more consequential than restoring the stable purchasing power of the dollar by Fed mandate. That would crush most of Wall Street machine and that feeds money to the Union Party through inflation tax," unquote. Person got 9 likes. Somebody by the name of Tim West said, quote, 23,000 employees at the Federal Reserve. What are they doing, unquote. He got 6 likes. Which, I was going to say, an ADHD idea of the day. Should we have camera surveillance open to the public for all government jobs so you can see what they're doing or not doing? I mean, they already spy on us. Why not spy on them? That'd be an interesting idea. But I know when it comes to government employees, not all, but just the rumor, just the whisper of a word of accountability is kind of like acid to them. Somebody by the name of Viral V Beast said, quote, "You don't need 23,000 employees to do that and will implement a 90% headcount reduction in the US Fed." Got 11 likes actually. Let's see here. Dragian says, quote, "He keeps saying he'll cut 90% of staff, proving he doesn't understand the operational side of the Fed. Bank audits, cash management, electronic fund transfers. The non-operational he wants to eliminate might be 20% of the staff," unquote. Got 3 likes. Which would be interesting. I can't help but think a lot of government entities are kind of like Twitter. They had 7,000 employees. Elon Musk came in and trimmed a bunch of fat, got down to about 2,000 employees, and guess what? It's about the same darn experience from the consumer perspective. I wonder, let me comments, what do you think is the percent of the federal employees that you can just cut and it would have no effect on our lives? It's certainly not 0%. Let's see here. Additional comments. 123 Bravo saying, quote, he's generally speaking, he's right about it, unquote, getting 3 likes. So interesting enough. Let's see here. We'll do 1 or 2 more comments here today. Let's see. A lot of comments with only 1 or 2 likes. Someone by the name of the Memetic Industrial Complex says, quote, yes, and as you have aptly pointed out, inflation is cumulative when it comes to price increases, so the American people are always stuck with the bill for government waste, unquote. That person got 54 likes. Someone by the name of Gibbs, G-I-B-Z, nevertheless, he says, quote, 100%, I do support your view on starting a zero budget for these government agencies. No more rolling last year's budgets into this year and assuming you'll continue to go that ways now terribly. We need to allocate proper funds to the departments and remove this swamp, unquote, getting 23 likes, which is the detriment of pretty much every government or public entity in the United States. The way they do their budgeting is, it's very famous, you don't use it, you lose it. So they have an incentive every single year to spend more and more money. Because if they have a surplus, heaven forbid, they actually cut down or decrease their cost, their whole budget goes down to the next year, and they're worried, oh, well, I might need something else. So the whole structure is in place for it to just stay bloated and in fact get bigger and bigger and bigger over time, much like American waistbands, which, again, that's not a healthy thing for our country or our people. Perhaps a good metaphor, the United States needs to go back to the gym. Uncle Sam needs to do a little bench press. That's a good metaphor, I'll take it. Let's see, a lot of people in the comments, 10, 12 people saying we need to go back to the gold standard, getting between 1 and 3 likes apiece. So, a couple of them with the meme with the mic drop. So, interestingly enough, so not as many comments as usual, and not as many electric or really captivating comments where they're getting thousands of likes, but quite a few people agree with him. Again, I'd say 95, there's just 1 or 2 ones, but scrolling through here, about 90, 92% agree with Vivek. Interestingly enough, I think if more Americans were educated, and I know that public school system sure as hell isn't doing to do that, but if more people understood the situation when it came to the Fed and the financial system and inflation and what's causing it, I think there'd be a voting revolution tomorrow. They'd be voting more independents, perhaps even Republicans if the Republicans are do something someday. So it'd be interesting to see if this is a winning topic, so to say, for a Republican nominee, if this will push him ahead of Nikki Haley as they kind of go back and forth. It'll be interesting to see, but as I always say, time shall tell. Thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October, so if you can click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, the comments are appreciated as well. We try to make the show better and better and better together. If you like the video, leave up a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you don't like it, and then leave the comments so I actually know how to make the show better for you. And also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.